May the sound of this bell penetrate deep into the cosmos. Even in the darkest spots, living beings are able to hear it clearly, so that all suffering in them ceases. Understanding comes to their heart, and they transcend the path of sorrow and death. The universal Dharma door is already open. The sound of the rising tide is heard clearly. The miracle happens. A beautiful child appears in the heart of the lotus flower. One single drop in this compassionate water is enough to bring back the refreshing spring to our mountains and rivers. Listening to the bell, I feel the afflictions in me begin to dissolve. My mind calm, my body relaxed. A smile is born on my lips. Following the sound of the bell, my breath brings me back to the safe island of mindfulness. In the garden of my heart, the flowers of peace bloom beautifully. We will now maintain total silence. At this time, I'd ask that our incense lighters please come up. And inside your booklet, there is a paper titled Incense Offering, which we'll chant together. And we say, in gratitude, we offer this incense throughout space and time to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. May it be fragrant as earth herself, reflecting careful efforts, wholehearted awareness, and the fruit of understanding, slowly ripening. May we and all beings be companions of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. May we awaken from forgetfulness and realize our true home. Hello, everybody. I'm Shinkyu. If you haven't met me before, I'm a Soto Zen lay teacher. I'll be speaking about Buddhism today and Soto Zen specifically in a little bit. But we will begin with some courtesy announcements. Families with small children are welcome to use the downstairs area for their needs. There's a water fountain down there and cups available for water. If you find that there's a need for seats or family members who would like to sit together, please adjust your seats accordingly. As a reminder, please do not walk across the front of the area. Please, if you need to use the bathroom or go downstairs, use the back. And yeah, we chant at a medium, upbeat tempo to breathe life into the sutras. It's not meant to be a funeral dirge. So keep that in mind, please. At this time, I would ask everybody to stand. We'll greet each other. Yes, next we will chant the 3 refuges in the Heart Sutra, which you can find in your booklet.
I go for refuge to Buddha, my deeply awakened mind, the living source of understanding and compassion, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I go for refuge to Dharma, the path of mindful living, leading to healing, joy, and enlightenment, the way of peace, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I go for refuge to the Sangha, the loving and supportive community of practice, realizing harmony, awareness, and liberation, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I am aware that the 3 jewels are within my heart. I vow to realize them. I vow to understand living beings and their suffering. I vow to cultivate loving kindness and compassion, and to practice joy and equanimity. I vow to live simply and sanely, content with few possessions, and to keep my body healthy. I vow to let go of all worry and anxiety in order to be light and free. I am aware that I owe so much to my parents, teachers, friends, and all beings. I vow to be worthy of their trust, to practice wholeheartedly, so that understanding and compassion will flower, and that I can help living beings to be free from their suffering. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. Sutra, the Bodhisattva of great compassion, from the deep practice of prajna, paramita, received the emptiness of all 5 skandhas, and delivered all beings from their suffering. O Shariputra, form is no other than emptiness, emptiness no other than form. Form is emptiness, emptiness form. The same is true of feeling, thought, impulse, and consciousness. O Shariputra, all dharmas are empty. They are not born nor annihilated. They are not defiled nor immaculate. They do not increase nor decrease. So in emptiness, no form, no feeling, no thought, no impulse, no consciousness, no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, no form, sound, smell, taste, touch, or objects of mind, no realm of sight, no realm of consciousness, no ignorance, nor extinction of ignorance, no old age and death, nor extinction of them, no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cease from suffering, no path to lead out of suffering, no knowledge, no attainment, no realization, for there is nothing to attain. The Bodhisattva holds on to nothing but prajna, paramita. Therefore the mind is clear of any delusive hindrance. Without hindrance there is no fear. Away from all perverted views, one reaches final nirvana. All Buddhas of past, present, and future, through faith in prajna, paramita, attain to the highest perfect enlightenment. Know then the prajna, paramita, is the great Dharani, the radiant fearless mantra, the utmost supreme mantra, which is capable of allaying all pain. This is true beyond all doubt. Proclaim now the highest wisdom, the prajna, paramita, gate, gate, para gate, para samgate, bodhisvaha. Gate, gate, para gate, para samgate, bodhisvaha. Gate, gate, para gate, para samgate, bodhisvaha. Dhammaha prajna paramita hridaya sutra.
All right. Okay. Today's Dharma talk is titled Senjo, the Zen art of everyday living. And so, once upon a time in ancient China, two groups of monks were arguing. You see, there was a little cat that wandered into the monastery, and the Zen monks, being Zen monks, they posed the question, say, does even this cat have Buddha nature? Which is just a fancy Zen way of asking, can even this cat gain enlightenment? Well, the monks of the Eastern Hall said, yes, this cat does have Buddha nature, while the monks of the Western Hall said, no, this cat does not have Buddha nature. Well, the argument must have gotten pretty heated because it caught the attention of the abbot, Nan Chuan, who zipped into the hall, snatched up the cat, held it up in his right hand, pulled out a knife in his left hand, and said, "If any one of you can say something, you'll save this cat. If you can't, then I'll cut it in two." Well, the monks just sat there and looked at him in shock and said nothing. And Nan Chuan, good to his word, cut that metaphorical cat in two. Dogen, the founder of the Soto school of Zen Buddhism in Japan, looked at this koan many hundreds of years later, felt the same shock that we still feel to this day, and said, "You know how to cut a cat into two? Cut it into one instead." So certain groups of Zen students can be defined by the koans that they tend to focus on more than others. And with Shuji's group of students, Shuji's my teacher, we tend to talk about this koan a lot. And so, like, what the heck's going on with it? I say that this koan is pointing right to the very heart of our practice, oddly enough. And how is that? To begin with, I don't believe there was ever a cat that got cut into two, got cut in half. We'll get that one out of the way at the start. Many of these stories were passed down orally for hundreds of years before they were finally written down. And to me, this kind of sounds like the type of thing you'd whisper about a mean middle school teacher. Like, I heard he failed his entire class one year, or he'll lock you in the closet if you don't do your homework properly. Or one time I heard that Nan Chuan cut a cat in half when the students couldn't answer a question. Things like that. So what is going on with this koan then? I say, metaphorically, splitting a cat into two is quite literally what we do all our lives. It's what the monks of the Eastern and Western halls were doing before Nan Chuan happened upon them. It's what we do when we look at the people on the other side of a political spectrum or other side of any type of difficulty, and we label them as evil and we label ourselves as good. It's what we do when we give someone an ultimatum. You're either with me or you're against me. But when it comes to Buddhism, it goes even deeper than that. We cut ourselves into two when we separate the secular from the divine, the pure from the impure, emptiness from form. We tend to believe that we exist as individual separate selves that are completely cut off from the world out there, and that we're something permanent and distinct from all the objects out there in the world. This is what we call dualistic thinking, and it's our most basic delusion. We cut the cat in two, we cut the world in two, and we cut ourselves in two. It's very basic to how we view ourselves in the world, and it's the cause of many of our problems. Going further, one of the important ways to read a koan is to see yourself as all of the characters in the koan. So in this case, we're the monks of the Eastern and the Western halls who are arguing about the cat. We're also Nan Chuan, the master, who comes along and tests us. And most importantly, we're the cat, who we ourselves cut into two. The same shock and unease that we feel for the cat is the same shock and unease that we should feel for ourselves, who are continually cutting ourselves into two, cutting ourselves off from the vital source with ideas and conceptions and discrimination and craving. But Dogen points a way towards a solution. We should cut ourselves into one. And that's Zen practice, cutting ourselves into one. But how is that done? The standard reply is Zazen, seated meditation. But I've heard from quite a few people over the years that meditation can be difficult, I understand. And this got me to thinking that Zen isn't only about meditation. It's a big part of it, but even Dogen himself talked about other aspects, other practices that are still the Buddha Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, just as much as meditation is. So allow me to talk about some of these practices for just a little bit. The key point is that this very world right here, where we eat and sleep, go to work, raise our families, pay our bills, worry about the future, this very world right here is nirvana. It's just how we relate to this world that can turn it into samsara, into an endless cycle of dukkha, of suffering and dissatisfaction. So to illustrate, there's a famous Zen saying, before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. And typically we think that how we act after we've gained enlightenment would be very different. But for Zen, that's not so true, which can sound a little bit odd, but we express our inherent enlightenment through the most mundane aspects of our lives, because that's all we really have, is mundane life. Even Zen practice, as mystical and otherworldly as it can seem, is just this everyday life. It's how we undertake it that's the key. And I've talked about it before, but it's important to reiterate. To simply do an activity, any activity, no matter how mundane, to simply just do that activity without injecting all this, I'm doing this, or I'm doing that, or bringing all these preconceived ideas to it, like I hate doing the dishes, or I hate having to make dinner after work, or just making yourself unhappy the entire time, resisting it. Or if it is something that you really like, making it unenjoyable by reiterating how this experience isn't going to last. The happy experience is going to go away. The advice is to just look at all of that in the mind and just let it go away, watch it go away. And sometimes we really need to study ourselves before we can really see what it is that we're doing to ourselves, which mainly boils down to beating ourselves up because we can't make the ideas that we have about the world real. And as an illustration of this, in Zen, we don't see ourselves as these separate beings who are going around the world doing all these different things. We are what we are doing. We are what we experience. When we're washing a plate, we're washing the plate. Dogen calls it washing, washes, washing, where subject and object are completing the action of themselves. And that might sound a little bit vague, but it's just the experience of being fully engrossed in the washing. You're not planning the rest of your day. You're not wishing you were anywhere else, but right there at that sink. You're just there, plate in hand, feeling its weight, feeling the water rushing over your hands, feeling the tickle of the soap. In that moment, there's no separation between you and the act of washing the dishes. They're one. And the trick is they've always been one. It's just that our mind likes to fill in the space with words and ideas and preferences, which pull us out of the experience by plastering up a wall of conceptions about the experience. This turns washing, washes, washing into I wash the dishes. Now, I've gone on the entire time and I haven't actually even started talking about the subject of the talk yet, which is Senjo, which means washing, appropriately enough. And it's a fascicle or a chapter of the Shobogenzo, which is the True Dharma Eye Treasury, a collection of writings by Zen Master Dogen, like I said, the founder of the Zen school, written between 1231 and 1253 CE. And this particular fascicle, it's a bit notorious since it deals with how the monks at the monastery are supposed to use the bathroom in a way that accords with the Zen path, or with the Dharma. Something I'm not exactly sure how many people are aware of is how exacting and choreographed the life at a Japanese monastery really is. Most of this choreography was set out by Dogen himself, at least in spirit. The life at a Zen monastery is set up to quite literally be an embodiment of interbeing and no self. So for instance, the daily flow of activity there is dictated by a series of drums and bells that sound throughout the day. Each person at the monastery is always attentively listening and waiting for a specific drum or bell to sound, which is a signal for them, for instance, to start cleaning the floor. Now, cleaning the floor in a Zen monastery is very choreographed as well. What you use to clean, the position of your body, how fast you're supposed to do it, and so on. There are people further on in the monastery waiting for those floor cleaners to pass them by, which is a signal for them to start their own very specific set of tasks, and so on throughout the entire monastery, throughout the entire day, throughout the entire night. Now, I won't get into many specifics, but using the bathroom at a monastery is as much a choreographed affair as cleaning the floor or preparing the food. And I'll give you just a little hint. Dogen writes about it. He says, when going to the eastern quarters where the bathrooms are located, you should be sure to take a hand towel with you. The way to do this is to fold the hand towel in half and put it over your left shoulder, letting it hang down over your sleeve of your robe. When you have arrived, you should hang your towel over the clean clothes pole. Hang it in the same way that it was hanging when it was on your shoulder, and so on for many, many pages. With each task, there's a corresponding verse that needs to be recited. So, for example, before you begin brushing your teeth, you say, toothbrush in hand, I vow with all sentient beings, may all minds attain truth, and may we be naturally pure. And a lot of this can be traced back to the Avatamsaka Sutra, where, for example, it's written, when washing your hands, by all means pray that all sentient beings may acquire the finest hands with which to receive the Buddhist teachings. Dogen even gives instruction to his monks on how to clip their fingernails, and he gives it in the most Dogen-esque way possible. He writes, you should keep the fingernails on your 10 fingers clipped, whereas 10 fingers is a reference to your fingernails of both your hands, right and left. You should also likewise clip your toenails. So this is all pointing in the same direction of what I'd said earlier, where we can find the Dharma everywhere, in clipping your toenails, cutting your hair, you name it. It's all we do. So if there's some aspect of our lives we don't think contains the Dharma, that's cutting ourselves into two. To find the Dharma in clipping your fingernails, you're cutting yourself into one. We should also keep in mind that Dogen was giving these instructions to his fellow monks. So what would this look like in our everyday lives? I know I said I was going to talk about meditation, but allow me to speak about Zazen for just a moment, since it is the hub of Soto Zen practice. The specific style of meditation that we do is called Shikantaza, which means just sitting. And that is exactly what we do. We just sit. We don't follow the breath. We don't scan the body for sensations. We don't chant mantras. We don't try to solve koans. We simply just sit. And in that sitting, we manifest our non-separation from the totality of the universe and the totality of that very present moment. This is where the form and emptiness from the Heart Sutra that we just chanted actualize their pivot, which is us, simply seated. And the key word here is just. Just is the entirety of our practice. When we just sit, we're not calling up all of our old karma. We're not imposing our preconceptions on it or on ourselves or on the situation or on anything. This just means that we actualize our emptiness and our form together. And what do I mean by that? To be empty is to be empty of the permanent, unchanging essence that we believe makes ourselves ourselves. It's that little kernel of me that I suppose resides somewhere inside of me that never changes and makes me, me. To be empty is to see that this is just an idea, something we've made up and are projecting out into the world or back down into ourselves. To be free of this idea is to be liberated, free to simply inhabit whatever situation or event is happening right now, and then to be free to simply shift to whatever the next situation will be without clinging on to the old situation or reaching out for something new. And this just also applies to all the rest of our lives, as you'll see, hopefully. This is why Zazen is such a transformative practice, because it's a training for this just. It strips away everything extraneous and just leaves this simple present experience, making us able to see more clearly the functioning of the mind in its most basic maneuvering. You get to see its tricks of the trade. You get familiar with its patterns of behavior. Because these maneuvers are so basic, so fundamental, you're able to recognize their influence in almost every experience that you have. And what are these most basic maneuvers? They're the old standards: clinging, avoiding, and ignoring. So, for example, I was on vacation not too long ago, and I took the opportunity to spend some extra time in meditation. On the first day, I had what you'd call a pretty bad time. My legs hurt, my back hurt, and my mind just kept wandering, kept running. But the key insight for us is that I didn't try to fight that. I didn't try to escape into fantasies of a better, easier meditation. I didn't try to convince myself that I was enjoying what was going on either. I just looked at it and acknowledged what was happening. Then the next day, I had what you would probably call a pretty good time. Everything went smoothly. My legs felt great. My mind was clear and focused. I was completely in the moment. And while it's okay to acknowledge how things are going, to cling to that good experience is also not part of our practice. Sometimes we sit in objectively uncomfortable circumstances. So that's a metaphor for our life. And other times we sit in objectively comfortable circumstances. This is the form of our practice. And it's okay to acknowledge this, but the emptiness part, the acceptance that there's no permanent essence to ourselves, to zazen, to meditation, that one day things are going to go well, quote unquote, another day things are going to go poorly, quote unquote, and not to cling to it or push it away or ignore it, that's our practice. So enough talk about meditation. We'll get back to the rest of our lives. Basically, we're going to try to apply these same lessons to everything. When we go to brush our teeth in the morning or before bed, we should take a moment and thank that toothbrush. You don't need to say it out loud, but just an acknowledgement that this tool is going to help keep our teeth healthy. This is Dharma. When we get woken up by a neighbor's dog, when we thought we were going to be able to sleep in, we should pause for a moment and thank that dog for allowing us the opportunity to be able to practice patience, which is kshanti, one of the paramitas. Or when we're late to work and we're racing to get through that intersection and the light turns red just before we get there, we should stop and thank that light for showing us how we're grasping so hard at an idea of how things should be instead of living with the world or how the world actually is. Being right here in the moment, not letting our ideas about the moment dictate how we should react, but simply just being in the moment as it is. That's cutting ourselves into one. So this is a practice that anyone can do, and it can be really difficult since we all have lifetimes of karma that are really insistent on how we should act, and a lot of times those suggestions are not particularly skillful. But in Mahayana Buddhism, we have the teaching of Bodhisattva Manjushri's sword, which is the sword of wisdom that cuts straight through delusion. So let your mind and your life be that sword. When things get tough, when things get good, just every day use that sword of wisdom to cut yourself into one. See what time it is. Okay. If anyone had any questions or not, I got just a minute or two before we'll start meditation. If not, it's okay. Zen is not so much meant to be understood, but it's meant to be practiced. So when you're hearing someone speak about Zen, it's more like you're listening to someone give you instructions on how to dance. You're not going to turn these around in your head and be like, okay, I'm going to put my foot here and I put my other foot there, and I'm going to do. You just get out there and just start moving your feet, doing it. So for us, our dance is to sit in zazen quietly focusing, watching what our minds tend to do. What your minds tend to do is that old karma, pulling up old ideas and methods of dealing with your suffering. And then when things are very quiet in there during zazen, you can really see those little wheels turning, the old styles of behavior. And once you're up in the world, doing what you're doing, I can see what was happening there on the mat is happening right now, and you can hopefully cut it off. Sometimes it's very difficult, but things being very difficult, also part of the practice. So, if there's no questions, we can start meditation. Okay. Start the first one. up, we will share any joys and concerns. I can start. My son's probably going to move back in with me for a month or two while his sister's in his room looking for an apartment, so that should be fun. I have apartment's a bit of a hermitage almost. I'm usually living by myself, so it'll be nice to have a roommate for a little bit.
I started whipping it like I think maybe a week ago, and I've gotten really good at it. But like 2 days ago, I hit myself on the arm directly where it ends, so I have a bruise right there. It really hurts whenever I move that arm.
Our Sangha member and friend Gail is visiting her son in the ICU. So hold her and her family in the light, please. Brother. Yes, her brother.
I would share a joy. Some of you might know that our son was involved in an accident in January where they lost their leg from the below the knee. And yesterday they came to visit from Chicago and walked right in our home without crutches, without anything. For the first time since then, I just saw them open the door and they just walked right in on their new prosthetic leg, and it just was the most amazing thing to see. Stood in our kitchen, had a conversation, and it filled my heart with joy.
Hi. Something I do every day or when I'm around the public, the bank, grocery store, whatever, I always ask them who is their most either interesting person, experience, whatever they've done in their jobs. And you know what, you guys, you'd be surprised at the stories you hear. And then they start to share their stories, and I do the same. And it makes an experience for both of us and just a cooler moment. So thank you.
Well, that's it. We'll take a moment. Oh, another one?
We have a joy from one of our online members. She's attending a big family reunion today. Is very happy about that.
We'll take a moment of silence for the joys and concerns. I have a few end of service announcements. I'll go first. Reminder to the Sangha members to arrange and fluff your cushions and return your space to the way it was when we found it. Cushion handles and tags face the back of the hall. Mat zippers face to the right of the hall. Stage left, stage right. Please return chant books to their front page and place incense offering and monthly chant in the book, and then hand off to anybody who is collecting the book. And I invite everybody afterwards downstairs for tea and to have a conversation if you'd like. I don't have any other announcements. Is there? Yeah, right.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Jeremy. I'd like to say just a couple of words about Dharma, which is the practice of cultivating generosity in Buddhism. It is the reason we are sitting in this temple with nice air conditioning and lights and everything. It's because of everyone's generosity. No one receives a paycheck who is associated with the temple. And so, everything that's brought to you on Sunday and then every other day is just because of everybody's generosity. And thank you all very much. If you'd like to take part in Dharma, cultivating generosity in your own practice and supporting the temple, you can by going online to the temple website at zengr.org. There's a button or an avenue there to make a donation. There are Dharma boxes at each entrance to the temple, front and rear, where you can leave cash or check. And there's a QR code on the front of the boxes that will take you to PayPal. And if you're watching on YouTube, there's the show more option and a drop down and an avenue there, which you can donate. And thank you all very much.
And a few more announcements, July ones. Let's see. The board meeting happens on the third Sunday of every month from 11:30 to 1 p.m. We meet in the temple in the basement, but you're also invited to view the meeting via Google Meet. There's a Buddhist-based recovery meetings, which are Mondays at the temple. You can also join via Zoom. Wednesdays at the Alano Club, which is 1020 College Avenue Northeast. And then Fridays at Garfield Park. You can also join via Zoom as well. There's also the online meditation group, which meets Wednesdays from 7:30 to 8:15 p.m. Also, you can join via Zoom. And if you want to know more about that, you can contact Reverend Kunga. I think with that, we will have our free closing gathas. Find in the book. Have everybody stand.
For all unskillful actions ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thoughts, now I atone for them all. Vast is the robe of compassion, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Buddhist teachings for the benefit of all sentient beings. All beings, one body, I vow to liberate. Endless blind passion, I vow to uproot. Dharma gates without number, I vow to penetrate. The great way of Buddha, I vow to attain.
You can end with bows. Extend the sangha. Thank you, everybody. You can meet downstairs if you'd like for tea. Otherwise, we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.